Welcome back to my inner sanctum. I'm your hostess, Countess Elizabeth, Mistress of the Macabre. Sometimes fate has its way of making things particularly worse, and often chance causes disastrous events. The crash of the LANSA Flight 508 was one such event. Today, we will hear a story about how chance caused the most deadly lightning strike disaster in history, and hear a tale about how one woman, Juliane Koepke, a lone survivor, was able to live through such an event. So let us strap in our seats as we prepare for takeoff so that we can explore our grotesque curiosity. LANSA Flight 508 departed from Lima's Jorge Chavez International Airport just before noon on Christmas Eve, on its way to Iquitos, Peru, with a scheduled stop in Pucallpa, Peru. The flight was flying about 6,400 meters, or 21,000 feet, when it encountered an area of thunderstorms and severe turbulence. There is evidence the crew decided to continue the flight despite the hazardous weather ahead, apparently because of pressure to meet holiday schedule, always wanting to put punctuality before safety. How they would regret that decision. They had only been flying on the Lockheed Electra L-188A commercial plane for about 30 minutes when they flew through a sudden violent storm. The plane was struck by lightning and in an instant began to break apart. Juliane Koepke was flying with her mother at the time of the incident. Little did she know that she would be the lone survivor of the disaster. A little background on Juliane. She was the daughter of scientists Hans Wilhelm Koepke and Maria Koepke, who were both establishing a research station in the Amazon at the time. They were on the plane coming home from Juliane's high school graduation party. It was only supposed to be an hour-long flight. In Juliane's words, "It was Christmas Eve, 1971, and we were eager to get home. We were angry because the plane was 7 hours late. Suddenly, we entered into a very heavy, dark cloud. My mother was anxious, but I was okay. I liked flying. 10 minutes later, it was obvious that something was very wrong. There was heavy turbulence, and the plane was jumping up and down. Parcels and luggage were falling from the locker. There were gifts, flowers, and Christmas cakes flying around the cabin. When we saw lightning around the plane, I was scared. My mother and I held hands, but we were unable to speak. Other passengers began to cry and weep and scream. After about 10 minutes, I saw a very bright light on the outer engine on the left. My mother said very calmly, 'This is the end, it's all over.' Those were the last words I ever heard from her. The plane jumped down and went into a nosedive. It was pitch black and people were screaming, and then the deep roaring of engines filled my head completely. Suddenly the noise stopped and I was outside the plane. I was in a free fall, strapped to my seat bench and hanging head over heels. The whispering of the wind was the only noise I could hear. I felt completely alone. As the plane broke apart, Juliane was still strapped into her seat, and that free fall was her falling from 3,000 meters to the jungle below. She recounts, "I woke up the next day and looked up into the canopy. My first thought was, I survived an air crash. I shouted out for my mother, but I only heard the sounds of the jungle. I was completely alone. I had broken my collarbone and had some deep cuts on my legs, but my injuries weren't serious. I realized later that I had ruptured a ligament in my knee, but I could walk. She was badly injured from the crash, but she was alive. The lone survivor. In her recounting the event, she could hear planes looking for the wreckage, but she could not see them due to the thick canopy of trees." Juliane had some rainforest survival experience because her parents had the research lab in the rainforest, so it is not as though she was completely unfamiliar on how to survive in the rainforest. But the problem was that the rescuers most likely thought nobody survived the crash. She mostly stuck to the crash site. She recounts, "I found a small creek and walked in the water because I knew it was safer. At the crash site, I had found a bag of sweets. When I finished them, I had nothing more to eat, and I was very afraid of starving. It was very hot and very wet, and it rained several times a day. But it was the cold in the night, and to be alone in a mini dress was very difficult. On the 4th day, I heard the noise of a landing king vulture, which I recognized from my time at my parents' reserve. I was afraid because I knew they only land when there is a lot of carrion, and I knew it was the bodies from the crash. When I turned a corner in the creek, I found a bench with 3 passengers rammed headfirst into the earth. I was paralyzed by panic. It was the first time I had seen a dead body. By the 10th day, I couldn't stand properly, and I drifted along the edge of the larger river I had found. I felt so lonely, like I was in a parallel universe far away from any human being. I thought I was hallucinating when I saw a really large boat. When I went to touch it and realized it was real, it was like an adrenaline shot. But then I saw there was a small path into the jungle where I found a hut with a palm leaf roof, an outboard motor, and a liter of gasoline. I had a wound on my upper right arm. It was infested with maggots. A about 1 centimeter long. I remembered our dog had the same infection, and my mother had put kerosene in it, so I sucked the gasoline out of the canister and put it in the wound. The pain was intense as the maggots tried to get further into the wound. I pulled about 30 maggots out, and I was proud of myself. I decided to spend the night there. The next day, I heard voices of several men outside. It was like hearing the voices of angels. When they saw me, they were alarmed and stopped talking. They thought I was some kind of water goddess, a figure from a local legend who is a hybrid of a water dolphin and a blonde, white-skinned woman. But I introduced myself in Spanish and explained what had happened. They treated my wounds and gave me something to eat, and the next day took me back to civilization. The day after my rescue, I saw my father. He could barely talk, and in the first moment we just held each other. For the next few days, he frantically searched for news of my mother. On the 12th of January, they found her body. Later, I found out that she had also survived the crash, but was badly injured, and she couldn't move. She died several days later. I dread to think what her last days were like. Well, that was truly a grotesque tale. A tale where fate was the ultimate decision maker for Juliane, since she was the only person left alive. It is debatable whether the LANSA crew could have foreseen the lightning strike. They may have thought it would never happen to them. Well, they were wrong. May the souls of the passengers and crew rest in peace. Thank you for watching the video. Like, subscribe, and share if you would also like to keep exploring our grotesque curiosity. We will meet again in the darkness of the night.